a lot of bad things in the 80s when you're professional wrestling business, that's for sure. You know, you read about it, you hear about it. Dave Von Erich, guy who died from those kind of things. And then he talks about how, Mike Von Erich, Dino Hernandez, Kerry's motorcycle accident, which many people do not know about, where Kerry Von Erich actually got into a motorcycle accident, cut half his foot off. Many people didn't know that he had half a foot. How can you not know that kind of thing, huh? Even some of the wrestlers didn't know he had half a foot. And I didn't hear about it until about, like, Ric Flair's book, and then I heard it again this time. It's something that's very rarely mentioned. Talk about Mike committed suicide. Jerry Jarrett buying WCCW, and how Kerry went to the WWE. Chris Von Erich committing suicide, and then Kerry Von Erich. If you look at the trend, David Von Erich died from drugs, or something inflamed or something like that. But I still attribute it to the drugs. Chris Von Erich dies from suicide. Mike commits suicide. Kerry commits suicide. The only son left remaining is Kevin Von Erich and Fritz Von Erich. Fritz Von Erich was the dad, obviously, but he died of natural causes, I believe. But, look at all these kids. They all committed suicide. And I think it's because, Fritz Von Erich, maybe he pushes kids into wrestling. Maybe they didn't want to become wrestlers, That's the kind of thing when you have a wrestling dad, is that he'll push you into wrestling sometimes. And that's what Fritz Von Erich did with all his kids, I believe. And, even though they didn't succeed, like, Chris and Mike, wow, they're awful, wrestlers. And they probably realized their careers were going nowhere, so... And all they know how to do, they grew up loving wrestling, watching wrestling, their dad being a wrestler and a promoter. All they know is wrestling. And when they can't succeed at wrestling, I mean, what else are you going to do in your life? So, they took their lives. And then Kerry, how he embarrassed his family. His family has already had enough tragedies and everything, and he just embarrassed his family by a forced prescription thing. He didn't want to embarrass his family. Kills himself too. I mean, really, it's a tragedy, the whole Von Erich story. But really, it's a triumph. They were really the thing that made Texas almost rough. Texas wrestling was the... you look at the stadiums and all the things that they played. They played Dallas Stadium everywhere in Texas, all the big stadiums. And tell you what, they had a lot of fans. They truly had a huge following. And the 80s, world class. I'll tell you what, was one of the best promotions out there. They talk about Super Clash all day. The AWA and the NWA got together. The CWA and NWA all got together, did a huge Super Clash show. How that was a big failure. You remember World Class? I think people that, grew up watching World Class in Texas, and some wrestlers will even tell you, you gotta remember the storylines, the crazy characters. It was the WWE of today back in the 80s, in Texas. Just done a little bit more smaller level. You didn't have scantily clad women running around 24/7. You didn't have all these controversial angles. You had almost reality-based storylines. Not really reality-based, but you had these storylines where they could actually happen. They weren't like kid-based or, fiction-based or or fake stuff. They almost had it to where it was like a line between real and fake almost, World class. They got a couple extras on here. Matches, they got, let's see here. King Kong Bundy, their retirement show against Fritz Von Erich back in 1982. Takes on Fritz Von Erich. Ric Flair against Kerry Von Erich for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in a cage. David Von Erich's in here fighting. A hair versus hair match with Iceman King Parsons and Buddy Roberts. 6-man tag team title. And that's another thing. They had a 6-man tag team title. That is almost unheard of in today's professional wrestling world. But World Class had that. They're innovative in that, having a 6-man tag team title. I love to see a title like that today. Makes little things a little more interesting in the tag team division. Gentleman Chris Adams on here taking on Kevin Von Erich. You have a couple of title matches on here. The American Tag Team Championship is on here. 7-second David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions, where the Fantastics against the Midnight Express. Overall, it's just, Texas matches. They were almost innovative. Actually, were innovative, I'll say. It's a good DVD, I'll say. I'll give it 3.5 stars. Not exactly a best rating. It's almost like if you want to be in school, it's like almost, I don't know, let's see, a B- or a C+. That's the kind of DVD because, really the matches could be better. The story is great. You know, when they tell the story on the DVD, it's great. You know, it entices you, it makes you love it. But that's, you know, it's a good DVD overall, 3.5 stars. If I really didn't like it, I would give it 2 stars. But I actually like this DVD. Lastly, I have a review today about a legendary group. And what better way to start off this review of a legendary group to talk about a legend himself. A 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. A kiss-stealing, wheeling-dealing, jet-flying, limousine-riding son of a gun. Bleach blonde hair. Best interviews of all time. The Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And everybody right now is talking about Ric Flair. And because Ric Flair, his career is literally winding down. When the storyline writers write it in that Ric Flair is going to lose, his career is over. And all you people that have grown up watching Ric Flair back from the 70s to the 80s and the 90s to today, truly are going to suffer when he leaves. People like me, who have had 17 years of watching Ric Flair, will suffer a little bit. But the people that are really going to miss out are the people that see Ric Flair in his old age. You know, of course, he got DVD matches and matches they can see from his older days. I mean, his younger days. But these young kids that are growing up today, and they're going to hear and they're going to look back at Ric Flair, they're going to have to go back to these DVDs because Ric Flair is going to be gone. You know, it's going to be a sad day in professional wrestling when Ric Flair is gone, I'll tell you that. And a lot of fans love Ric Flair. Ric Flair, where do you begin? Do you begin on how his interviews, his in-ring work, his memorable feuds against guys like Ricky Steamboat and Sting? Really, you talk about Ric Flair, almost you can't talk about their history of professional wrestling without mentioning 2 guys. One of them being Hulk Hogan, obviously, and the next being Ric Flair. Ric Flair, in my opinion, is in the top 5 of the best wrestlers of all time. And I'm not talking about showmanship. I'm not talking just about showmanship and everything. I'm talking about in-ring work, his ability to read a crowd, how to call a match, and especially his showmanship. Overall, he had the package. You know, you got some guys in the business that, you know, have the right look, but they don't have, you know, the right charisma, the right attitude, or the right showmanship. You got guys that have the right showmanship but don't have the right look. Ric Flair had the perfect look, and he had the perfect showmanship outside of the ring. When this guy had an interview, you'd end up hating, you hate the guy so much during his interviews, but Ric Flair, by the end of the interview, he'd have you laughing. You know, Ric Flair is a memorable interview. If you see any of his interviews back in the day, you will definitely